Good evening, guys, and welcome out to Revolution. And so my last video on Papyri 1, which was the third video that I've done on this, I got halfway through and there was a power outage in the whole neighborhood that went for 6 hours. And so that sort of destroyed that idea. So I thought, I was thinking about it all day and I thought, no, I just want to come home and work on Papyri number 1. So we're just going to get straight into it. I'm going to try not to offer any commentary beforehand. We're just going to start reading the text. Okay, so for those just joining us, this is my 4th video. In the first video, we went through and we read all the way through to, I think it was line number 9, which is, it talks about a minute up. And we were just checking some of the readings, making sure that some of these were correct. And what I'm doing is I'm basically creating a bit of a database for myself so that I can go through and on my website, I can watch through this material. Anything that I've pointed out, I can put on my website. And that way it's my website becomes the main place to go to if someone wants to know about Papyri number 1. And so we've found some interesting things. I might just quickly point those out. And so obviously the alpha at the beginning of the page, this seems to be like a chapter 1 type of thing. We've found this type of thing. Now this has been noticed before, which is an upsilon with some dots around it. It seems to have a line above it, and it does seem to have lines around it. Now, what I might do, because oftentimes what I'm doing in these sessions, I'm looking at Adobe Illustrator here, and it's as clear as day to me here. But then when I look down on the screen, it's not as clear. But it does seem very clear there at the moment. So what I might actually do, I might just make that large. That way you can see it a little bit better. And I'll zoom in a tiny bit. Whoops. That I zoomed in on the wrong page. How did I fix this last time? Full screen and then out of full screen. There we go. Okay, so let's go to here. And we'll zoom in. I'm just seeing what that looks like for you guys. Yeah, so you can obviously see that there. One other interesting thing that I've found here is, and I am absolutely 100% convinced that this reads 616, which is quite an amazing thing. One of the things is I've shown quite a few people this, and people have just immediately dismissed it and said, no, on their one it says like XI sort of thing, which is, if it's a numeral, that would be like a number 11. But most people are just going here. So if you go to Wikipedia and you look at this document, that's about as far as you can zoom in, which is almost nothing. And you can't see a lot of the detail. And it's in a very deep, dark type of resolution. And so when you're looking at this here, I might get the picture up that I've got on my desktop, which shows this a little bit better. And I think what people immediately think when I'm showing them something like this is that I've just come up with this idea, and I just like to be sensational. What I was doing, let me just share with you exactly what I was doing when I found this. So I was sitting here with my wife, and I was explaining how I've just got to put this bit of information into the website, and then we're going to run off and do something, go to the shops or do whatever. And I actually thought that this reading here was just a key and a sigma because I didn't really look at it properly. I just went, oh, there's definitely some writing there. Looks like a key and a sigma. You know, that's about all I can see there, you know, sort of thing. And so I actually wrote down, I started to write down here, detail in front of the rector of P1, perhaps Christos as a nomen sacrum. And that's as far as I got, because I could clearly see the sigma and I could clearly see the key, but I hadn't really looked at it properly. Okay. So then I looked a bit closer and I was like, actually, that's got like an iota or something in the middle of those. So that wouldn't be Christos. That would be, and I'm like, XIC. What's that? I thought, oh, maybe I can look it up. Maybe it's some sort of word or, you know, some sort of detail. And I looked it up and it means 616. That's how I found it. So I think what people thought was I'm looking for some sort of conspiracy thing. I'm looking for some sort of detail. No, I actually looked and I saw these things before I even knew what they were. And so then I was like, okay. And straight away I did a video. So that was my video number 2. And I was explaining to everyone, wow, I think I've found 616. And it's got the line above it. And then this here comes from Papyri 115, which is basically the one that has 616 in it. And so I was looking at that, comparing it. And I guess the thing is, what I've seen is people are they've just been so quick to dismiss this. I can't unsee it. You know what I mean? That's all I'm seeing there is just this nomina sacra line, a key, an iota, and a sigma. And to me, it looks very similar to this. I haven't even sized that. I just copied it and pasted it there. And it's pretty much exactly the same size. Now, I don't know why it would have that type of reading there. I did look up the key, the iota, and the sigma in like trying to just search for words that had that. But I just kept finding 616 everywhere. And I was like, I think it says 616 because what I've done at the beginning of this examination of Papyri 1, I'm putting aside all my presuppositions. I'm putting aside all, you know, whether it's Textus Receptus, Alexandrian, Westcott and Hort, whatever, what the date is, if it was made, and then, you know, if it's, you know, 1st century, you know what I mean? Like if someone wants to go that early, but, you know, people say it's like, it's end of the 2nd century. And I'm throwing all that up and saying, okay, I'm going to examine this the best that I know how. We're going to look at everything. We're going to examine everything, and just wherever the chips fall, they fall. So I just, in a way, I sort of have found that people almost assume that I'm reading into this. And now I understand that there are some conspiratorial type people out there who are seeing things in things that aren't really there. You know what I mean? But the way that I found this, I didn't know that this was 616. Like I knew the whole thing of what Dan Wallace was saying, and I'd probably seen this on like Dwayne Green's program, but I didn't memorize it. I didn't think it was anything. I thought maybe it's a page number or something like that. And then when I looked at it, it was, to me, it's very clearly there, and I can't get away from that. So I guess in a way, I'm sort of a little bit gobsmacked that people are not looking into it more, because to me it's so clear that that's exactly, you know, you can see the C, the sigma there. You know, when I say a C, you know, I'm obviously talking about a sigma, and so that's something that I've looked at. But we are going to leave that issue because, you know, to me, it's just like, okay, well, I've seen that as well. We've been looking at this sort of decoration piece down there. Now, we are at line, I think we're at line 9 where we're looking at Aminadab. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it seems like it's here. but maybe line 8 has a minidab. Now, I will make that a little bit smaller. And it looks like there's a huge fold in the middle there where it's all sort of fallen to pieces. Now, these dots here, they do seem like ink dots. And from what I can understand, this seems like a fold in the page. And on the back of this, you have writing as well. Here you have the 616 writing. But I'm not sure if there's anything on the other side of this. There's nothing that I've seen so far anyway. But we just want to go through and check these letters. And I'm going to get a few little things up here that help me with that. Okay, so line number 8. So that seems like it's Aram. Okay, so that's Ezrom there. And so Ezrom, and then it's got Ezrom again. So Egenesen ton Ezrom, and then it would have the there, Ezrom there. So that you can tell those 2 letters in the middle are pretty much destroyed. Now I'm going to zoom this in so we can all see this. Okay, so that's an epsilon, a sigma, and so we're looking at a rho and an omicron that seem to be missing here, but we do see a line. Now I wonder if the other Ezrom had that. It doesn't seem to have that. I'll just check with some of the more modern Greek. So what verse are we on? We're in verse 4. So this is my website, the Textus Receptus website. A minidab, so it must be verse 3. Yeah, Ezrom. Yeah, it does seem to have the acute symbol above the omicron in the modern, because that seems like it's right at the place where you would have Ez and then a rho and then an omicron there with this. And so that would be the mu there. And so I would be in agreement with what it says there. I mean, pretty much when you're looking at names, it's pretty straightforward. And I don't think that Ezrom changes between Westcott and Hort's text and the Textus Receptus. So then we have the there, which is the conjunction there. The Ezrom there egenesen, so the delta and the epsilon for the there, and then epsilon and the gamma. So the gamma is sort of a little bit missing there. On the transcription that they originally have, it doesn't show that that's missing. So this type of damage could have happened in the last 100 years or so. Okay, so that's epsilon, so gamma, another epsilon here. Here's from that again, another epsilon, and then a nu, then another nu. So again, and then an eta, and then a sigma. Looks like a C, and then another epsilon, and then another nu. So to me, that is just the egenesen, so which is exactly the same as what's here. So it says the egenesen with the final nu there. And so this is pretty much exactly the same as there, same as that. and then Egenesen. So it does have the final nu on these. Ton Aram. Okay, so Egenesen. So you can tell that's a tau there, and perhaps an omicron, but it is missing there. A nu, and then Aram. So I guess the alpha is, which would look like this letter here, is there somewhere, and it's missing. But then you have the rho with the tail down here, which is the R. Then you have another alpha, Ara, and then you have a mu here. So it's Aram. And so I would agree with what's written there. Is there anything after that? I think some of these dots here are ink dots. Now what I'll do is I'll just read through a certain section. We'll stop at a certain bit, and then I'll come back. So I guess we just got to remember that it was this fold line is where we sort of started with this Esrom here. And I'll just go back and we'll just check around some of these areas. Is sometimes, this can just look like a bit of a smudge or anything like that, but it could actually be, some sort of lettering that's occurred, or they could, sometimes these manuscripts were already written on and someone washed them off, depending on how new the papyri was. And so, I would say that is definitely Aram, agreeing with what's written there. Okay, so it has the Aram there, and then it's saying there is another Aram. But what's interesting, in the original, it's saying that only the alpha is really destroyed here. The rho, the alpha, and the meme is still intact when you go back 100 years to 1898, where, I mean, to me, that looks really, really corrupted and destroyed. But I guess, because I'll just show you what I'm looking at. So this is the Grenville and Hunt book. And so I'm reading Aram here, where they only have the alpha as something that's missing, and the ram, and the next Aram is not in a bracket because it's there. But clearly, when you try to read it, it's like the only letters I can really make out are the rho and the meme in Aram, and I can agree that would say Aram. But the very next word says Aram as well, and I can't even make it out. It's that bad. But they don't have that in a bracket. So it just makes you wonder how much this has been destroyed, since they've found it. If it is a genuine document, I'm assuming it is a genuine document. And so, but yeah, definitely would have to look at that issue of Aram. Now, they do have some footnotes here. Maybe they give us some more information. No, they don't mention Aram or anything there. It gets to a Minadab. And so, excuse me. Yeah, so it's, let's have a look at the next line. Now, I'm just going to have to zoom out so I can get my bearings. Okay, so that was right on the crease. So we're going to the second line underneath the crease. Let's zoom in there. Okay, so what are we looking at? Okay, first line under the crease, and this is the second line under the crease, which says that looks like a delta, and it says it's an epsilon. It is very hard to decipher there, so it would just be the there, and then Egenesen. So Yeah, interesting. It does, like that does look like a delta. It's very similar to that one there. And there's appear everywhere in this document. There's one there, there's another one there, there's another one there. So all of those three in a row there are all there. And that, and Hixson is just appearing everywhere. So, but it does seem stretched out. So you've got there, and then you've got another epsilon, and they're saying in their one that has faded, and then you've got a gamma. So it seems like that would be an epsilon, and that would be the gamma, and that would be an epsilon there. Again there. Again. Son. Okay. Okay, yes, I can see that now. It just seemed like it was spaced a little bit too much. But this type of place here, that's where anyone investigating this manuscript who could go to the Pennsylvania Library could look at specifically these parts where they're written, where there's holes, and examine whether or not the ink folds over into the line. So that's how you would tell if that hole was actually already there and they've just sort of written it as if it's, fallen off, sort of thing. Because some people have old papyri and they just write it in an old style over the top. So it looks old. The papyri is old. The writing is old. So they just deem it as an old manuscript. But that's one of the ways that you can tell by looking at an overlap on some of these places where there are holes, because some of these holes would have been in the original. I do assume that the first vivlos here, because when you look at this vivlos and the one underneath it here, they seem to have a very similar style, and all the way through it's like that. But when you look at this one, it seems like that hole was already there, and they've written this in a swervy sort of way to fit it in next to here, which is a bit strange. But anyway, so we're looking at the Hixson, and then Ton, and what name do we have there? So that's where we go to Aminadab. So the alpha, the mu, the other mu, how we spelled here. So the iota, nu, alpha, delta, alpha, vita. Okay, so amin, and that's definitely an alpha, amina, and a delta, and an alpha, and that is definitely a beta. But it does seem like it has a little line above it, which is interesting, because that's the end of Aminadab, or Aminadav, however you want to say that. But it does seem like something it's got like an extra little bit there. So Amina, and then a delta, and alpha, and that is the vita there. So it does seem a little bit strange, doesn't it? Compared to, say, like this one down the bottom here, this vita, it sort of almost looks like an E on. It almost looks like a C. That letter that's sort of, it's a very strange sort of letter with a tail on the bottom, but it still doesn't even fit that. But interesting. Let's zoom into that. Okay, where are we? I think I've zoomed in the wrong place. Okay, so we are right here. Zoom. it's different. Aminadab. It could have been some sort of ink blotch there. Perhaps it's just got the Vita. I see what it's doing. So maybe I can draw what I think it's doing. Hopefully this will help. I'll try and get a pencil. It's sort of not allowing me to do it. I don't know if this will work, but it does seem more like, no, that's that's really bad. I hate those tools. I just want a pencil. All I wanted was a pencil. No, it's not allowing me there. But maybe you can follow it through as I'm doing this. I think it was just the B or the Vita would have gone around there, and that would have gone around there, which makes sense. It doesn't really look like, or it actually does more so look like a Vita there, where it's not coming from the middle there, it's coming from right from the end, right from the left-hand side. And so coming back up, you can see that would fit into a normal Vita. So even though I'm only just double checking everything, just making sure each letter is exactly what we've got in our database here. So, okay, Aminadab, and then it has alpha and a mu. And it doesn't put it in brackets either. It's just got alpha and a mu here. So I can sort of see that would be an alpha there and a mu there. Okay, interesting. Can't really see anything else in that section. So we'll move down to the next line. So that's the beginning of Aminadab. So it's another mu, Amin, with a nu here. Okay. So Amin. Now that's completely faded. The only letter that it says has faded there in the Grenville and Hunt is the iota, which, I mean, half of the mu's gone, half of the nu's gone. So definitely that's one of those alphas that looks like a bit of a fish. Amina, and then a Velta here, and then another alpha, and then a Vita, and then a Velta epsilon. So Aminadab there. Egenesen is very clear. You can see that. Egenesen, Ton, I think this is Naoson, a new alpha. Yes, and it says the sigma is faded, but it has another sigma, so that must have been a lot clearer back then. So we assume there's a sigma there, there's another one there, and then we have it says it's an omicron. It does look like an epsilon in a way. And that looks like a tau, but it says on the chart here that it's Nae-son, so it's Nae, and then two sigmas, and then an omega, and then a nu. So that's interesting. I guess because there's so much activity happening around here, there's ink blotches, there's all sorts of things, and this is probably a place where there's just so much activity, like all these ink blotches. Sorry, I just I keep bouncing back to there. I'm not sure why. Come back. There we go. Click off. There we go. Yeah, so we can see all this blobby ink stuff, here. Ah, yes, I'm seeing it now. So that is the omega there. So it sort of looks like a W. It definitely has like a line here. But so there is a nu there, but I'm sort of struggling to see that nu. Naes on. Ah, okay, yes, very, very interesting. It has naes, and then this has the line above it, which is usually for a nomina sacra, but it's above the omicron, which seems to. I know in Latin when they have a certain line like that before the N, it just means the N is not going to be written there. So it's naeson, and they put a line where it's basically saying that it should have a nu there. And they've actually pointed that out in this text here, which you can see right here. Let me make that a bit bigger. And so right there, very interesting. Naeson. Okay, so then we're looking at naeson there again, a ton Solomon, Sa, Lambda, Salmon. I was saying Solomon. Salmon. Okay, so we're going to get into that line. We'll check that one out. So, okay, which line were we at? Okay, so this would say have a nu here, 2 alphas, na A, and then 2 sigmas, na A sun. Okay. Naeson there, agenesen, so agenesen again, ton, and it was salmon. So the sigma, the alpha, the lambda, sal, and the mu, and the omega. Pretty much you can't decipher them, but it doesn't say that you can't. I know it says that M is missing, so but the omicron must have been there, and then you have a final letter, which is the nu on the end there. So I would agree with that. That's fine. Okay, we'll go to the next line. And so it says salmon there again, and we would just assume that it says again nesen, ton, and this is Boyce. Okay, so it's saying it's spelled with a vita, an omicron, an epsilon, and then it's got like the capital C there, which is the sigma. So it's Boyce. So this is one of the names that they say is more related to the Westcott and Hort type of text because of the spelling of this. I think Codex Vaticanus has this type of reading. So let's look at, oops, I'm opening things that I shouldn't open. There we go. So this one here, Boyce. So the Textus Receptus has Boaz. So this has Boaz. Actually, I think I might make that a little bit smaller because it's gone a bit blurry. Okay, so yeah, the TR I'm pretty sure is booze, like B-O-O-Z. Booze. Let's have a look. what the exact TR says. Okay, it's not opening for me there for some reason. There we go. Yeah, so it's 2 omegas, omicrons, where they have an epsilon there. And so I might even sort of speak about this here. Very few manuscripts have Boyce, Papyri 1, and that is Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, K and CO. Boyce in C, D in Luke 33 PC G1, which aligns with the LXX and almost 1,500 manuscripts, suggest Boyce to be original by far. So this would be one of the reasons why they're saying that this Papyri 1 is close to Vaticanus, okay, because of this type of reading. And so we have, the Zare reading, and so the Boyce reading, okay. Now they're also saying the Aminadab, so Aminadab with 1 mu. And so the Aminadab has 2 mu's here, which seems to go with the Westcott and Hort type of reading. Okay. What we saw earlier was the it's actually not written here, so I won't even talk about it. Okay, so let's continue on. So Boaz, a Genesenton Boaz, okay, and then this in all the manuscripts it just says ek, so out of. I just keep losing my spot there. I'll just move that up. That's better. Ek Texe Rahab. Okay, so let's go down here. So then we have Texe Rahab, which is very clear that's what it says. And then it says Boaz. So it's very clear that is an epsilon there. Boaz there, Agenesen ton. And there is a letter there, which is Yobed. Yeah, so it is an iota. It's got these 2 dots above it as well, which is very interesting. It seems like a lot of these letters have this when it's an iota in a name. So that's interesting. We should see a little bit more of that. So we have an iota, an omega, a vita, an eta, and a delta. And it does have a little accent mark here. Okay. All right, so Obed, so it was of Rahab, and then Boaz begat Obed of, and then I'm pretty sure we're going to see Tamar. Obed. Ectes Ruth. Okay. Obed. Ectes Ruth. Obed the Egenesenton. Yesi the Egenesenton. David ton Basilia. So David the King. Okay. So we're getting to the point where we're talking about David the King there. So that's a little bit of a milestone because we're way over halfway on reading this one side of Papyri 1. So what we're doing is we're just checking every little bit. And so even just the fact that this has like a breathing mark there. It's quite an interesting thing to have. So we see the ek, Texe, and then this is ru. So you see the rho, the upsilon, the theta, and it's saying there's a letter missing there, the omicron. So the rho, the omicron, the upsilon, and the theta, Ruth, is there. And it does seem to have a little bit of a dot there, but that could be because this next one is a name. It's Obed. And I will just double check that. Yeah, Obed. Okay. Obed begat Jesse. Okay. So Obed, yes. So I'm right there. Obed the Egenesen ton Jesse. Jesse the Egenesen ton David. Ton Basilia. David the Egenesen ton Solomona. Ectes Ureu. Okay, so we're getting there. So so we stopped at Ruth there, and then we are looking at Yobed. So it's actually sort of in English like Obed, but it starts with an iota, which is interesting. Yobed. So obviously this one is almost completely corrupted here. It says in the old bracket of the 1598 edition, it says the Vita and the Eta have disappeared, and only the Delta is showing. Even the Delta is pretty much missing here. So Obed, and then I'm guessing that would be a Delta there. So I guess you got the iota, omega, a Vita, an Eta, and then you got a Delta here. Then you've got another Delta there with an epsilon. So the there, agene. Okay, again, okay, it continues on the next line. That's why. Again, sen ton, and then we're getting to Yesi. So it has the iota with the two dots above it. It has the epsilon, two sigmas, an alpha, and an iota with no dot above it. And then it has Yesi again with the two dots, an iota, an epsilon, two sigmas. Now, obviously, there's a heap missing, and it does say that there's heaps missing here. An alpha, an iota, and then a delta. And so it should say there, and then E, and then the gamma again, Nesen. So I think we would agree on that. And then the ton and David. So this is exactly the same David as we saw in line number 1 up the very top. So a delta, an alpha, an upsilon, an iota with the two dots, it seems, and then finishing off with another delta there. Then it says ton basilica, or basilia, sorry. Basilica is kingdom, basilia is king. So it says David, and then that's it. That's a tau, an omicron, and a nu, and then a vita for basili. So it says alpha, and then we've got a sigma, an iota, a lambda, and then an it says it's got an epsilon and an alpha there, but obviously it's pretty hard to read that when there's just nothing there. So it's got the name of David again. So I guess that they've actually got that in brackets as well. So there must have been quite a substantial bit missing already here, but it does seem like it's faded quite a lot more because it goes into the iota delta. It says that's showing, but I really can't see that there. Or maybe I'm just not looking hard enough. So maybe we'll go backwards a little bit. So this is what I'm looking at. This is my guideline here. So you can see the alpha, delta, alpha, upsilon. We're all missing back 100 years ago, 120 years ago. So now obviously that's quite a lot more today. And it's saying the iota delta. So maybe that's the iota delta there. And then it's got there again. Yes, I could see that. So this would be an iota here. This would be a delta, which we can look at an example of a delta pretty much anywhere. There's a delta there, sort of looks like an alpha, but yeah, I can see that could be a delta there, and then another one there, and then again, and then it's going to say again se. So again, and then that's a new, obviously that's faded there. Again s with a sigma. Again, a sen ton. And then I think we're looking at Solomon. It's a bit faded. I'll try and get this up to where I had it before. Solomona. You see, okay, I'm going to have to go back a little bit. Okay, again a sen ton, and then that's starting there at the sigma. Sigma, and then it says that that's an omicron. It doesn't look like an omicron, but that's fine. I don't think there's any other variant that would fit with that, but it does look like it's a little bit like an omicron's usually, just looks like an O, but that sort of looks like a bit of an E. Maybe it's just peeled off a little bit. Definitely a lambda. So, and then it says it's another omicron, but that doesn't look like an omicron. It looks like solaire. Unless I'm reading it wrong. Genesen ton. No wonder I'm struggling. Genesen, no, I'm not struggling. Genesen ton. Solomon. Okay, so maybe I'll start from the end and work my way back. Okay, so it says it has a full stop there. We can see that here. Now I'll just go one line up, so it's lining up with it. Looks like a sigma and an omicron there. I can agree with that. An upsilon, an omicron, iota, epsilon, a rho, an upsilon, an omicron. Okay. So that's Uriu. Okay. So that's a different name. And then this is definitely Texe, tau, eta, and a sigma. Okay. So we've sorted that out. That looks like an ek to me. The ek is there. So I think it's just the name Solomon has thrown me. And I do know some people, even Textus Receptus people, like if you look at Gavin McGrath, he has said that Solomon should, in the Textus Receptus, be spelt differently in Scriveners, which is interesting. I guess, majority text guys, Westcott and Hort guys, TR guys, are all looking at these things. But he said that's probably the only thing he would change in Matthew 1. Okay, so where are we? Okay, Solomona. So I guess I'm just tripping out. I mean, that's definitely a sigma. I'm tripping out at that being an omicron. That's definitely a lambda. This one here being an omicron doesn't seem to fit. So maybe it's the omicron is faded here. Solom moon. Okay. So that would be mu there. And then that would be a faded letter there. So interesting. Because I know that Solomon, the name of Solomon is contested. Okay, so here it has Solomona, where the Textus Receptus has Solomonta. But both of them have like solemn in them. It's not like to me, I'm sort of seeing that as almost like an epsilon, and this I'm like, what's going on here? So I guess I'm just double checking everything, and that will have to be something where I guess I'll look up variants and just see if there is any other type of spelling or anything like that. And as I go back through this video later on and just look at everything, usually I just go through like on 1.5 speed, but anything like this, I'm stopping it and reevaluating it in my own time, so you guys don't get too bored with this. But yeah, it's very interesting, Solomona. Okay, so let's continue on from there. And so we did go to the end, but we went backwards, and all the letters were matching there. So it was Yesi. Was it Yesi? Where are we? Solomona, Uriu. Okay, Uriu. And then, okay, so then it's Solomon. So Solomon ve agene. And the sigma is faded there. Agenesen, tun roboam. So it'd be a row there, and omicron, a vita, and another omicron here, an alpha and a mu, and then a row, omicron, vita, and an omicron. So that's rabo again. So I'm seeing all that. I don't think there's anything controversial there. Rabo M. So the end of that name, Rabo M, and then another there. Agenese, and then it gets pretty bad here. Agenese, and then ton, and then it's Abia. Okay, so ton. Now it does say on their sheet that the abia here, only the epsilon and the iota were missing. And then it repeats the name pretty much straight away, showing you the spelling. But there is quite a lot more missing here. So let's just say egenesen, ton, and then abia. And maybe that's the end of the abia. Then another alpha here, and ab. And then an epsilon. That looks like another alpha there, so maybe I'm getting that wrong. Abia. Okay. All right, I'll start from the end. So they're saying this is a there, which I can see that there. I'll move it down. The there is a delta and an epsilon. So the abia, so that's the alpha at the end. They're saying it's got an iota there, but maybe that letter there. And that's an epsilon, a vita, maybe a damaged vita. Yeah, so that's definitely the alpha there. So alpha, vita, epsilon, and maybe an iota there, another alpha there, and then there. So I can see that, what they've got written there. So that would be the end of the first abia, which you can't really decipher much about that name there. Maybe that looks like an alpha with that line there and that line there, just with the thin way that alpha is. So that would have abia spelt the same way through there, which is an interesting way to spell that. But I think I've gotten to the end of that line and it seems good. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. So we're nearly at the end of this side of the papyri, which is good. You know, I know this is like, you know, chewing beef jerky without any spit. You know, it's hard, but I just want to go through it, make sure that it's saying what it says before we evaluate it. Okay, so where did my other thing go? There it is. Okay, so then we've got egenesen. So egenesen, and then a ton, and then we're looking at another huge gap in the text, and I think it's Asaph. Egenesen, ton, and that's definitely the alpha, the sigma, and then you can see that little bit there is it's the same as the other alphas there, Asa, and we can't tell what's written there. It does say that that's missing, but then they've got these letters here, Asaph, there Egenesen, and it's missing, it's gone. Maybe it's in the crumbs that fall down the bottom. So yeah, we'll search for that a little bit later. But it does say Asaph was at one stage legible there. So, but it does seem like that just says there again, where here it has there again. Okay, there again. So this last letter would be the phi, so Asaph, and I think the thing is Asaph is a contested reading between the Textus Receptus and the critical text, because Some of them just say, is it Asaph? I'm pretty sure it's Asaph. Or is it Aram? Yeah, it's Asaph, because Asaph is a psalmist, the Psalm of Asaph, where the Textus Receptus has Asa. So, but it's pretty hard to see the fee here. So the next, it says there, which is there. But that could be an alpha. One of these letters. It does look like an alpha. It doesn't look like a fee, but then we'd have to find another fee in this manuscript somewhere to see exactly how that's written. And maybe I should just do that now. Because that's, oh yeah, there's one there. So that's an alpha and that's a fee. So that says af. And so we're looking here at whether that is close to, like whether it says asaf ending in that, but it does look like an alpha, doesn't it? Which if it is an alpha, that would be a Textus Receptus reading. So that's another place. So beside the Solomon one, this would be another place worth looking at, where I would have to go through and double check all that. Okay. Interesting. So I'm pretty sure we would be in agreement that this would have there again. There. Hang on, where are we? There again. So there's another one there in, I guess that's Yosaphat. So you got Alpha there and Alpha here. It doesn't look like that's a fee, does it? Looks more like an alpha. Like, look at the letter above it with the little hook at the top. Seems like it's got a hook at the top. Interesting, interesting. Okay. There again. Okay, so we would be in agreement that that has that again there. Now the next line has exactly the same word, so we may as well just sort that out now. It has the delta, it's got the E, it's corroded there, and then again. So it's exactly the same as here. There again. So when we get there, we know that's what it says. So we're dealing with this line here. Let's check that out. So again, Nesen, and that would be the same on the line at the bottom as well. So it's got Nesen and Nesen. So obviously it's corroded Ne, and it's got the sigma, Agenesen, Ton, Yosaf, and then I think it's Yosafat, and then the Tau is faded. But it's definitely the iota with the two dots, the omega, Io, and then sigma, alpha, phi, and then another alpha, and then the tau is faded and corroded, but definitely says Yosafat. And then it would say again, Yosafat, there again, because we know that we already looked at that again. So it does have Yosafat with a little marker there at the end of the tau, which is interesting. And so this one here was very much identical to the line above it, where we have Nasen So the previous line was Agen, and then Nesen, and then Ton, Yoram. So the iota, again with the 2 dots, the Omicron, the Rho, the Alpha, and the Mu, Yoram. And then we see Yoram, the Agenese, with the line above the epsilon. So let's check that out. So Yoram, so the iota with the 2 dots, the Omicron, the Rho, the Alpha, and the Mu, and then there, and then Agenes. Oops, I've made that really big. Which there we go. Agenes. So it says there, Agenes, and then it says like the eta and the sigma are missing, and then it has an eta with a line above it. So I guess that's what they're assuming that is there, which is interesting. But then you got this huge tape mark here. So it's pretty hard to distinguish what that is. But I guess we'll just, for the moment, I mean, we're guessing there as well, so we'll take their word for it. But when I'm going back through my website and writing this out again in all capitals, and what I'll do is I'll put the ones that we can see, I'll put them in like maybe a red font, and the others can be in black. So then we'll just see the bits that are missing, the bits that aren't. So that'll be quite a fun little project there. But so we are nearly at the end. So it says the ton is completely missing on the next line. Down here, the ton. Okay, that's a bit clearer. I think I just zoomed it in. That's all I did. Oops. Yeah. Anyway, so the ton and then Ozean. So you can see where you have epsilon there. That looks like a zeta here. It doesn't look like an omicron, but it's so hard because there's so much missing and destroyed there. Oz, and then an alpha and a nu, Ozean, and it has Ozias, so Ozias, and then there again Agenesen. So we see the there and then again Nesen, and so it's very corroded, very corrupted there. Oops, I dropped that page down. I'll just zoom out and see what we got here. Okay, so that's the last little bit of it. Let's check that out. Now, remember, this is only side one. So I'll probably just focus on side one, for the moment. And then, because actually side one is the place where I can get a high definition picture. So the verso it's hard to get a very close up picture of it. Now it says here that, so that's all the other stuff that's there. But it looks like there's been some stuff missing or fallen off. Has again a sen, and then it has meta there. Okay, so all that's missing. So it just has a noon. So all those dots mean a whole line is missing. Then you've got another line here which just has a nu, but it's hard to read, and then an ME or a meme, and then an epsilon. So let's zoom in on that little square down the bottom. Let's check it out. Okay. So a M and an E, a meme and an epsilon. That seems to be what it's saying it has there. And then it's got an alpha and a sigma, and then an epsilon, a gamma, and then another epsilon. So it's Yekanias, and then that will be again there, Son, Zerubbabel, and they're saying this is an epsilon down here, Zerubbabel there, which is very hard to make that out. Okay, I think they're saying there's a whole line missing, because that definitely looks like it there. Then they got this little chunk down the bottom. Let's see if that's anything. It just looks like a bit that's fallen off from somewhere. I'm not sure where they attached that on. But then we're dealing with the recto after that. And so, very interesting. Okay, so I'll just zoom out a little bit. We want to put this into a filter effect. Okay. And we'll check out some of these letters under a filter. It's definitely Boaz here, the epsilon there, and another epsilon there, Boaz. The sigma at the end. This is where I was going Solomon, where this letter here threw me off. Now, I've got to take in mind that you guys can't see this in the high resolution that I'm seeing it on Adobe Illustrator. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go, okay. And I'll just zoom in like that. Okay. So this is where it says ton. It's got the sigma for Solomon. Okay, so it has the sigma. I can see that. This letter here, unless it's just damaged, unless that's just an Omicron there, and I can sort of see that now. It does sort of look like an epsilon, but not like this type of thing. It looks more like it's on a bit of an angle facing down, and I guess something more so you would see in a later Byzantine type of thing. So, and it doesn't really make much sense. And so Sol, and then yeah, I guess you got another Omicron here somewhere, but it looks like it looks like it could read like Selemon, sort of thing. But I've just got to go, okay, well, I've got to look at them a little bit more later on. It's just something where I'll probably just disprove myself. It does seem like a silly, nonsensical reading. Okay. Let's go zoom out a little bit. Solomon. Okay. It does look like an E there. Yeah, that was the meme and the epsilon there. And it seemed to have a line above it. It does look like something there as well. That looks like a meme there. But I'm not sure if that's marked. Let's have a look. Okay. Okay, so it does look like it, but sometimes it can just be the patterns of the manuscript. Jennison Meh. Now I'd have to quickly look up where it has Jeconiah and just see what's written there. If there's another moo. So it's Matthew 7. Rehoboam, Abia, Josaphat, Matthew 1:9. Okay, Matthew 1:9. Agenesen ton Akaz de Agenesen ton Ezekiel. But it does seem like that is an epsilon there. Well, that's definitely one there, but it does seem like there's one above it. But I'll have to zoom in a bit more. Okay. Okay, so it's the meme and the epsilon, but it does look like something is written here. It does seem like it's in epsilon. Maybe I can change the effect. There could be something in this area. It looks very hard to decipher, though. And so, yeah, that one down there looks like an alpha or something that's fallen down. So, yeah, anyway, that is a very interesting thing to look at. And all right, I'll undo all those. Go back to the original. Okay. Interesting. Looks like a bit of a move there. Which, what name have they got there? So they're saying this is Yekanias down here. So that would be Isaiah. So then it would have Yoram. So it could be the moo. It does seem like a moo there, doesn't it? Just with that little curl there. But then again, I was sort of seeing in a little epsilon there, but it just makes more sense with the spacing that it would be this here. And perhaps that darkness there, but I don't want to be too dogmatic on that. Oops. Let's zoom in again. But it does seem that like that is a pen mark there. Okay, so we're looking at Ezekiel, maybe, or Yoram, Yotham, or Ahaz. So yeah, that would be have to be something I do in my spare time, looking at that, and maybe on the other side of the manuscript, it has something that's bled through. That would be interesting. And I guess once I've written this all out, keeping it all in a specific chunk, maybe what I can do is put the letters exactly, like say, for example, if I just go to Matthew 1, just say I've got Vivlos here, maybe I can grab each and every letter separately. And put it on like this. That way I can, if I put it directly over it, the iota directly over it, then it'll be exactly in that same pattern. And then all I have to do is get rid of the document. So that'll serve as a template to do all that. And yeah, that way then I can just make it a photo and have them side by side and on top of each other. And that will also give me a really good template to go, okay, well, that's missing, and put, say, the letters in red or whatever color. But yeah, okay, so that's my Papyri 1, number 4 video. And I guess until I put all that information in there like that, I'll go through my first video, go through this, my 4th video, and double check everything that I've said, looking at those, issues like the name of Solomon and a few others, Boaz and Zara, and just checking all those, checking the nomina sacra, because they put son in nomina sacra here, but then they claimed it wasn't in nomina sacra here, but it doesn't show, and it didn't show in their one. It's quite a strange thing. It sort of makes you wonder about how accurate Grenville and Hunt were when they do that type of thing, because they put Weo here spelt out, but you wouldn't do that if it's in a nomina sacra here. So Vivlos Genesius Huio, sorry, Yesu Christo, there's a Huio there. Huio David, Huio Abraham. So it's Huio David. You wouldn't go Huio and spell it all out and go Abraham. You would have that in a nomina sacra as well. But they've put that in there, and that actually becomes an argument for it being closer to Vaticanus. And it's like, no. That's evidence from something you can't see, you know, sort of thing. And they're admitting anything in a bracket that they can't see. So basically, I'm just going to make this same sort of table. And then I guess I'll compare what they had and what we've got. Because when we're looking at Asaph down here, it didn't look, it looked like Asa. But I guess that's where, when it comes into it, where you've got every letter written out and you can put it over the top there, then you can go, okay, yes, I can see how it fits in, or yes, it's got a tiny little crumb of information that shows you the little alpha sticking its head up. And so anyway, I've enjoyed doing this. I know it's probably not the most popular thing on the internet to watch. It's a very dorky sort of thing, but I've enjoyed doing that. And so I'll go through and put all that stuff on my website. Now I might show you what I've already got on my website, so you know what I'm actually doing. So this is what I've got on Papyri 1. And I don't have a huge graphic for Papyri 1 on my site. Maybe what I should do is put a link to the one that I know is the best one available. It's on Wikimedia, not Wikipedia. It's on Wikimedia. Maybe a link there, so people, if they're talking and discussing this, at least they can go directly there. Actually, I might have put that down the bottom of the page. I think I did. Maybe I didn't. Okay, so yeah, the library that had these doesn't seem to have them anymore. So I'm not sure why, but sometimes they move them around. So these are the issues, like they're saying it's close to Vaticanus because of these type of readings. So Hoskia talks about this as well. Oh, that's interesting, because Vaticanus spells it like this. So he's saying, look, it's not really a Vaticanus reading. It's not agreeable with the TR or Vaticanus. So this is one of the things where I understand, I pulled the guy from the King James Bible Research Council, Coombs. I pulled him over the coals over his claims about P52. And since then, Dwayne Green has done a video very similar on P52, but also I think it was P60 and a few other things, because he kept following that through. But when you look at this, I mean, that's wrong. That's wrong. And so this is the thing. It's like, are only King James guys, to be frowned upon for having this bad scholarship? You know what I mean? It's like, clearly they've made these type of mistakes. And so, where it's like, okay, it's close to Vaticanus because of this spelling, and it's got a Minadab there, but it actually, Vaticanus says Aminadab, like that. It's very interesting. It actually drops a definite article there. There's quite a lot of stuff here, which is quite interesting to think about. Okay, yeah, I'm just looking at some of the names here. So anyway, that's the sort of stuff I'm putting on the website. And I've also got these pages. You can click on those and read what Grenville and Hunt said back in the day. So I only just had this so I could compare it, and that's only just page 2 of it, but they have a write-up on it. They talk about how they compared the Textus Receptus. They've got this page where they've got places where they've got Westcott and Hort text and the TR text. So apparently they had both of them out when they were in Egypt, and they checked both. But Hoskia seems to have pulled them over the coals on some of these issues. And it says there's an online copy in Munster here, but it's not found either. Some of these links are very old. Oh, yeah, that's in 2011. That's how old this page is. It's getting long in the tooth. Okay, so I think I've gone for an hour and a half. I think I will drop this, and I might even just continue just putting some stuff into this article, putting a few links in while my mind's fresh on it. And but yeah, I guess the next time I do a Papyri 1 video, hopefully I'll have all that one page typeset and filled with like capitalization, and also maybe all the typesetting over the actual picture. And because here you can see it does have, like, you know, bit damage with the dots underneath it and things like that, but we want exactly what's there. We don't want anything missing. And if there is anything we're sus on, we want to highlight that. So the Solomona one was interesting. The Asaph one was very interesting, I found. And it does seem like this one here. Okay, so this is according to Philip Comfort. So it would be interesting to have Philip Comfort's one there, the one that Grenville and Hunt had there, and the one that I've got next to it, to show, you know, is what's the difference. And also perhaps that's because the manuscript is decaying at such a rapid rate. When they originally looked at it, it had some of these readings. When Comfort looked at it, it had faded a little bit, because I can see here there are some more brackets that weren't in what we were reading. Like definitely when it had Asaph here, there was only just one bracket around the phi there, but now we've got two alphas bracketed as well. So very interesting. Okay, yeah, and then I guess once that's all done, and if there's anything newsworthy to talk about with that side of it, I guess I'll show you what I've done there. Then we'll jump into the next page. And so I might actually have to contact the Philadelphia library to see if I can get a high resolution scan of it, because most people only have the one side. But this other side's got quite a lot of interesting readings, and there are some differences with Vaticanus and Sinaiticus as well. With I think it's Jesu Christu. I think Sinaiticus has Christu Jesu or something like that. It's around the other way, which is interesting. So yeah, and also what I'm doing too is I'm putting in these pictures so that people can know, what I'm looking at and see that there. So that's that upsilon there, and this is the 616, the neighbor of the beast. It says that there, XIC, or the key, the iota, and the sigma with a line above it. Very interesting little tidbit there. And so who knows what else we're going to find. And if anyone has any high-res pictures of this, send them to me. Or if anyone has any information, perhaps I've overlooked something. I mean, even in these footnotes here, I should really go through these, but it's, Kurt Aland, he's talked about it. Kurt Aland, Barbara Aland, Philip Comfort, so that's in 2001. Hoskia, Codex B, and its allies. I'm not sure how much he talks about that, but that would be a good book to check out. Alexander Salter, so it's in 1913, so he probably talks about it there. Some interesting things for further reading. So yeah, that would be very, very interesting to go through. So we're going to go through Papyri 1 until we know every little detail about it. every little full stop, every little marginal note. And then we'll just move on to Papyri 2, and we'll just keep going through them, and we'll learn as much as we can about them. And so some of the things that I've changed here, this had the old sigma in, I think it was in Lord, or not the old sigma, sorry, the modernized way of having a sigma. So I've changed that there to like a capital C type of thing, because it's more true to the text that's here. And I think the thing is with the sigma, I mean, in minuscules, if it's a final sigma or it's in the middle of a word, it's medial, or here it's like the sigmas are just like capital C's, and so you just got to point that out, and there's a sigma there, so it looks a lot different. But anyway, I think that's about all I've got to say. I'll check these comments. AD33 is in the house. Calvin is saying good morning, Nick and AD. Be right back. Interesting anomalies. Yes, interesting. Truth Defenders is in the house. Revolution Shalom. Truth Defenders says the KJV camp is very hostile toward all other translations. Is there any point where the KJV camp accepts the variants from the other side? I don't think so, because then you don't, like, I usually define things as like KJV/TR, because some people are TR, and they don't gel with some of the King James readings, where I gel with both. I think the TR and the King James are fine. And so but yeah, I guess it just comes down to, I've checked a lot of these variants. People like James White and D.A. Carson, Mark Ward, they're talking about this type of stuff all the time. And when I double check what they're saying, a lot of the time it's so filled with error that it just shows that they've either copied and pasted an argument, or they've tried to come up with an argument and it hasn't worked. Most of the places where people talk about variation, these type of things have been answered many moons ago. And I thought I'd start from the other end, because people talk about the Mark 16 and what they would label the longer ending, which I just think is a normal ending, or John 7 and 8, where talks about the woman caught in adultery. These type of things. I know there's people arguing for that, but at the end of the day, I went to the ones that they were saying, no, this is definitely 100% a gotcha moment. Like, it's not even worth debating over this and all the rest of it. So I went to those arguments, like Revelation 16:5, and I was like, man, there's so much that people don't know about this, this reading, that it's the name of Jehovah, and that it should warrant a nomina sacra on it, which is why they've got holy there. It has the past, the present, and the future 4 other times. It should have the past, present, and future there. But it's the most holy name of Jehovah, exactly how it has it in the 3 I ams, with, I am that I am, say that I am sent you. And those 3 I ams have the past, the present, and the future. Translate that into English, it is art and wast and shall be, which is exactly the Revelation 16:5 reading. And also the fact that Theodore Beza said he had a manuscript with the reading in it. This type of thing is just overlooked, or when we show this type of stuff, it's just brushed aside. People aren't interested in it. They're like, oh, whatever, you're desperate, sort of thing. And it's like, no, we're just dealing with the facts here. And so I just find that the best argumentation has been thoroughly debunked. And so I to me, I'm not just on a side. It's not like I'm just a Republican and whatever Trump does is good, sort of thing. I'm just like, well, okay, if he does something bad, I'll say he's done something bad, or if a Democrat does something good, it's like, okay, they did something good. You know, it's like I'm not on any team here. I'm on the side of truth. I'm on the side of whatever I see in front of me, I'm going to say. But I also understand that there are a lot of things that I've learned over the years, and I think that the argumentation against the Textus Receptus and the King James is very flawed, fundamentally flawed. So when people learn textual criticism, they usually learn a whole bunch of anecdotes against the Textus Receptus, and that usually stays in their mind for life. No matter what you prove, no matter what you say to people, they're like, Erasmus rushed to print. Erasmus made a mistake. Erasmus lied. They've found this manuscript which Erasmus used, and and oftentimes we're just going through that type of stuff, just debunking it one after the other. And so I don't think that people with all these variants have like this huge science behind it. To me, like variation happened in every manuscript, but at the end of the day, it's how they use these variants, and the concepts like the oldest and best, this type of thing, and just stories that they'll tell about the Communionium, and stories they'll tell about the last 12 verses of Mark, and they've got these elaborate things that you have to sort of adopt and believe, and where I just think, looking at the evidence, to me, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. And I think some people don't go far enough with their studies, and they sort of become majority text people. That's what I feel. They feel that on things where they feel it's easy to describe and to defend and to understand, like, the woman caught in adultery, or last 12 verses of Mark, these type of arenas, they love that. But when it comes to these technical things, it takes a lot of thought, a lot of study. And I'm not saying these guys aren't smart, but I just think some people are actually infected by the critical text movement so much that they sort of refuse to see some things that are right in front of them. And I feel like, grabbing their head and rubbing their nose in it, sort of thing. It's like, just look at it, what are you seeing in front of you, sort of thing. And so Calvin Tried with Fire says, I know speaking to you, Nick, but I wouldn't say hostile. We are trying to warn against the Vatican readings in modern versions in love when possible. I would say through the preaching of a modern version. Most of the people I know who are like TR people, like, say, Jeff Riddle, he used to preach modern versions. ESV and all the rest of it. A lot of people like that. The Agros guys, Taylor DeSoto and Will Kinney is like, I got saved, I think it was like an NIV or something like that, And so I think the thing is, people do have testimonies of using these Bibles, but then coming out of that and wanting accuracy. Because, sure, there's a whole bunch of variants, but it's like, there's got to be a true reading there somewhere. And God said he would preserve his word. And I don't think God contradicts himself. Some of these variants cause Jesus to be a liar. Some of them cause him to get angry, in a sense where he's saying anger is a sin, and you'll be judged because of it. But then later on he gets angry. That just creates contradictions. And so to me, the Textus Receptus doesn't have any of those issues. And having gone out and preached and witnessed for so many years to atheists, to Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholics, agnostics, Muslims, oftentimes they're bringing up textual criticism. And they'll say, so how come the Bible says you have to marry your rapist? And it's like, it doesn't. And it's like, oh, no, the ESV says it. The NIV says it. Well, the King James certainly doesn't say that. So it's just a bad reading. And these guys know these readings. You're debating there with Muslims, and they're saying, well, how come they took out the Trinity with this verse or that verse? How come they've done this and done that? And oftentimes people don't want to acknowledge that Unitarians have been involved with Westcott and Hort and have corrupted the text. And so a lot of the Trinitarian verses are weakened, and a lot of the verses that deal with the deity of Christ have been destroyed. And so This causes huge weakness in the text, but a lot of people don't know that. They're just told King James only bad. These people are King James only. They're bad, and they're a cult, and so they've just got this mindset. It's like, oh, they're a racist, or they're a whatever. It's just a smear, a scarecrow type of term, and so people just think that, instead of actually listening and thinking it through and comparing, and oftentimes too there are weirdos out there. So if you want to demonize the Republican Party, put the weirdest people out there, people with a flashing headband with, MAGA on it, and they're running around the streets, and, they're full on, and they're walking around with their gun, and it's like, okay, well, maybe are they all like that sort of thing? But then it's like, they'll show the Democrats the same thing. You don't have to go far with the Democrats to show Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or whatever. But it's like, what I'm saying is that if people want to demonize the rapture, they will show the weirdest people who are predicting dates. And if they want to demonize Calvinism, they'll show the Westboro Baptists holding up signs, God hates fags, and all this stuff. But I try not to do ad hominem argumentation. There's some very intelligent people who are on the critical text side, on the majority text side, and I respect a lot of these people and the work they're doing. What I don't respect is when there is truth right there in front of people, but they choose a side like it's a football team. I would much prefer people do their own homework, come to their own conclusions, because I've seen people just go, oh, yeah, the last 12 verses of Mark, I'm not even going to look into it, but I just agree with Metzger or whatever. And it's like, So anyway, Truth Defenders says, Revolution, White's name usually comes up in these discussions. Surely there must be someone other than James White on that side that argues his points with some scholarship behind them or not. Well, I think James White is probably the most popular voice. And if you look at Wes Huff, he holds up James White's book, which I've got right in front of me. This book. Whoops. I'm not even showing. There we go. Now I'm added to stage. I thought I was there before, and I'm showing things. So there's James White's book, King James Only Controversy. Wes Huff holds this up and says, go there. Who else holds it up? Mark Ward holds this up, go there. Josh Barzon holds this up and says, go there. Pretty much everyone is saying, go here. But when you go there, it's full of rubbish. It's easily just debunked. I mean, all you have to do is look at the 5 types of King James onlyists. He has majority text people there. He mentions Zane Hodges. He's not a King James only. He just basically says everyone except for me and my crew are in a cult. And it's like, no, that's a really bad way to categorize things. So James White does a lot of damage, but everyone's going to him and saying, this is the book to read. This is the book. And most people hold up his stuff. And usually when I challenge someone on it, they're like, read James White's book. And it's like, okay. So then you get Dan Wallace, okay, or he might be more scholarly or whatever. I don't think he's that much more scholarly than James White. But, he has this air about him because he's taking photos of manuscripts. But at the end of the day, he's got a lot of problems too. Who else would be academic there? You'd probably looking at Peter Gurry, Mead, Wasserman. I mean, Wasserman doesn't believe in a literal hell. I don't know why people would hang around a guy like that. Peter Head, you can look at their stuff. But I've looked into all these guys. I invite people. I invite new arguments. There's not much difference between, like, say, an argument on, pick a verse. There's not much of a difference between argumentation from all of those guys and James White. And so James White's stuff is just the most popular, so that's what you have to deal with. I guess it's a bit like, if people are going to jump into the political arena, well, you have to deal with what Trump says every day on Twitter. It's just the way it is. And that's like James White. He
He's stuck his head out there for the last 20 years. And so it's like, oh, well, you have to deal with what he says. But, and so the question is, there must be someone other than White on that side that argues his points with some scholarship behind them. I mean, there's scholarship behind what's being said, but it's just, it's pseudo scholarship. It's lousy scholarship. And I mean, most people just go to Metzger. That's a default. Bart Ehrman was the last student of Metzger, so he parrots a lot of Metzger. Bart Ehrman, he comes against our position as well. Even though the guys on the other side, they try and make it like this horseshoe thing where we're closer to Metzger than they are. It's like, no, he's using your text. He's still part of the academy. And so, but, there are academic people involved with this, someone like Peter Gurry. But I just find that these guys have lousy arguments. And, what they're saying, even though it comes across as scholarly, like say on my article that I've got here, it's referencing Kurt Aland, Barbara Aland, Grenville and Hunt, Hoskier, Philip Comfort, anyone who's said anything about Papyri 1, it's like, okay, well, there you go. Peter Head talking about this type of thing. And so, people have argumentation. If I go to, like, let's just think of any type of variant, maybe I can jump to a specific variant. If I go down the page here and I go to, 1 John 5:7 is probably, it's probably a little bit too much information, but say Ephesians 3:9, Ephesians 3:9. Now, James White said there's no manuscripts that back up Ephesians 3:9. And so if he just goes to my website, he can clearly see, the pictures. P46, which doesn't say oikonomia or koinonia, it has konomia, which is interesting. And so it doesn't side with either, but it seems closer to koinonia to me. We've got manuscripts which have been corrected to read oikonomia, which they formerly read koinonia. We have oikonomia here where it has koinonia in the text. This type of information, I'm usually looking at Contras, Bengel, Albert Barnes, Henry Alford. These guys are not friendly to the Textus Receptus, and they're making all these arguments. And so it's not like it's just James White, but usually James White he's done whole debates on this. So looking at James Snap Jr., Wilbur Pickering, and so tons of information just on that one verse on that issue. So Calvin says he holds up Ward's also. So Mark Ward's authorized, which is, it's not really scholarly. When you go through it, you're just left cringing all the time. He has a lot of passive aggressiveness toward our camp and he's trying to cloak his passive aggressiveness in a veneer of care and love, and I care for these people. But ultimately, like, he's never once contacted me and said, hey, let's have a chat. He just sees me as bombastic. And when he was asked about me, he just said, why does Nick hate me? I don't hate him. I just like what he's saying, and so I'm willing to chat to anyone. Truth Defender says revolution. Well, those other manuscripts exist, and therefore someone held to them as credible or authoritative and complete. So what's the verdict on those prior to White that trusted those manuscripts? Well, I guess that's where, you go back through time and you look at people like Tregelles, you look at people like Franz Delitzsch, you look at the claims that they've made, and a lot of what they've said against the Textus Receptus is very easily disproven. Like the stuff that White says is usually based upon what they've said. And then you go back to what they've said and it's like, well, that's easily disproven. And half the time too, because we've found other things that back up the TR since then. The prologue of Jerome saying that the Communionium has been taken out by unfaithful scribes. I mean, that's just solid as a rock now, that is the prologue of Jerome. But for a while it was pseudo Jerome, and people still parrot that. People parrot old material. There are a lot of interesting scholars, Erasmus, Stephanus, and Beza, who did their homework on this and left us a lot of annotations, marginal notes, etc. And so that has to be taken into consideration, that the reformers, who I would say are way better scholars than anyone around today, like someone like Theodore Beza or Erasmus or Stephanus, would just run rings around the top academics that we have today on this topic. And I take what they've written about things seriously, and I think they had access to a lot more than we have today, in a sense where we can have access to a lot of other stuff, but they had access to a lot of things that we don't know about. And specifically, like, say, Revelation 16:5, I mean, it's only been in the last 5 years that people are like saying, oh, Beza actually did have an ancient manuscript with this reading. Now, I thought that in 2013, but I actually changed my mind back. But then Jeff Riddle, Larry Brigden, a whole bunch of other guys doing work on that proved that Beza had manuscript evidence for that, and people were just simply not reading his annotations. And so for scholars to write books like James White has and have 5 pages of Revelation 16:5 and not see that, it's like, well, what does he know about this? He doesn't know hardly anything about Revelation 16:5. And so, these manuscripts do exist, but it just depends. People put dates on things and say, well, this is, 4th century, this is 8th century. And they've thrown these dates on things where, I mean, archaic Mark, 13th century document was proven to be a forgery, modern day forgery. All the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Museum of the Bible were proven to be fakes when they tested them in 2020. So some of these things are fakes, sure, some of them are real and genuine and all the rest of it, but also it depends how they classify it. Some people classify them as, that's, like even the manuscript Codex Britannicus that Erasmus said he had, he wrote that out. He spelled it out in Greek. He wrote it out in his annotations, exactly what it said. And then when you look at Codex Montfortianus, which they say is that manuscript, it doesn't match. And it's like, it's not the manuscript. But the thing is, 99.99% of all text critics believe that. And to me, it just shows you that they're not really studying things properly. They're not thinking properly. When you see a huge mistake like that, you've got to go, okay, rewind. Yeah, that's an error, And so, but people are not thinking about that. People are not asking questions. They're just parroting whatever's been said before. So unfortunately, when it comes down to having manuscripts, yes, they existed. And your question is, well, those other manuscripts exist, and therefore someone held to them as credible. But Marcion was around as well. He was purposely corrupting the manuscripts. How do we know that Vaticanus isn't a purposeful corruption? How do we know Sinaiticus isn't a purposeful corruption? How do we know that? I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses do this sort of stuff. We just seem to give the ancient world a pass and say, well, the Gnostics never would have done anything, But when we read Jerome, he's saying unfaithful scribes are taking this out. When we read,
people talking about the woman caught in adultery. I think it was Augustine said that people were taking this out thinking that it gives them a green light to, husbands a green light to commit adultery and all this sort of stuff. So people were corrupting the text. It's like to say there weren't people corrupting would just be to ignore history. And so Calvin Tried with Fire says, who would want people not to read the King James Bible? Well, the Vatican, that's who. The Nestle-Aland Greek text is Vatican approved, which a lot of modern versions are based on. Yes. So Truth Defender says, what are they lacking for salvation? Well, I mean, you can get saved through reading a chick tract, you know what I mean? You can get saved reading one of those lovely little tracts that have flowers on the front and it's got NIV quotes, you know what I mean? But it's like we want truth. And so we're interested that God said he would preserve his words. And just like the Academy claim that they're doing, that they're trying to get the Alscom's text, they're trying to go to the original text, we think that we've already done that. And so we have just as much zeal as them, but we've already completed that. And they're still trying to find it. And if you find another manuscript somewhere, it might change their readings, or same with the majority text. The majority, they find another room full of manuscripts somewhere on Mount Athos. Well, there's 500 new manuscripts that they've got to, our reading's not the majority anymore. It's a minority. Whoops. Everyone delete those memory verses because our Bible's just changed. Our Bible isn't changing. It's stable. We have a stable text. And so I think every reading can be backed up very easily. Calvin Tried with Fire says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Modern versions do not contain every word. Yes, and Revelation 22, 18 and 19 inadvertently is saying that we will know where the words of God are, because it says don't add or subtract from them. So if it had in the Bible, when you have a puzzle, 1,000-piece puzzle, don't take one piece away and don't add another piece from it. So obviously you've got to know where those pieces are. How can you know if you're adding and subtracting from it if you don't know where the pieces are? I know where all the pieces are, but text critics, they don't. They're like James White will say, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do, shouldn't be in there. Dan Wallace will say it should be in there. So they're on the same team, but they're at loggerheads over which text. They could have hundreds of different readings that are different. And so that's why they're like, it's just a vague text. As long as it's got the basic story of Jesus, dying on the cross and, that sort of thing. As long as it's got doctrines in it, that's fine. But I think you could probably fit all the cardinal doctrines on an A4 sheet of paper. Does that mean that you can just delete 2 Kings? You know what I mean? The Bible is very clear. Don't add and don't subtract. It says that all the way through the Bible. So Calvin Tried with Fire says, and I'm not saying White, Ward, Wes, and others are Roman Catholic, but they push manuscripts from Vatican-approved manuscripts. And Westcott and Hort used Unitarian scholarship with George Van Smith to create their text. And so, George Van Smith was an absolute heretic, didn't believe in the Trinity, didn't believe in the deity of Christ, and he worked with Westcott and Hort, which shows you, their type of spiritual discernment. But, they've created a huge mess. So, Roman Catholicism, Carlo Martini's been involved with the Nestle-Aland since the 25th edition. He's passed away now. But Truth Defenders says Revolution actually says the prophecy of this book with all due respect. Yes, but even if it is just Revelation, I know where all the words of Revelation are. James White doesn't. He's got a different revelation to majority text guys. They've got a different revelation to what Dan Wallace says would be in there. The ECM has just come out, I think, with 116 changes or something like that. Maybe not that many, but they're still trying to find the book of Revelation. I know what the book of Revelation says, and it's settled. I know if I'm adding and subtracting from it. They don't. They have no idea if they're adding and subtracting. It's their text is like a Scrabble game. It's just putting pieces together and going, oh, I'll put that word in now. So Jeff Riddle is working on the reading of that book as we speak. Okay, interesting. But yeah, with the prophecy of this book, but there are other scriptures in Proverbs that talk about don't add to the words of God. Deuteronomy says that Jesus is very clear that his words will not pass away. Specifically speaking of his words, heaven and earth will pass away, but his word won't pass away. So surely we should know where that is. And I think that we do know where that is. I know where it is. A lot of people don't. And so I think if people don't know where the words of God are, it doesn't say much for their Christianity, because we are a people of the book. And so anyway, it's gone for 2 hours. I'll shut this stream down. Thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks for the pushback and the questions. And we will see you again very soon. And if you want to continue to ask things, you can just throw them in the comments there. I'll try and get to them as best as I possibly can. All right, guys, God bless you, and we'll see you again soon.